That's when I went to work for Forbes Books. Corporate branding was a little different because we started with the why. With personal branding, it starts more with the who.
On this episode of the Matthew Bird Podcast.
The more you become known, you can't do that without also getting people who think negatively of you.
The former VP of Marketing Strategy at Forbes Books.
Founder and executive coach at Personal Inc.
And personal brand strategist at Brand Builders Group.
Melinda Hinson.
What you want your customer to experience or feel when they interact with your brand, if you know how you're going to serve and how you're going to help, that really drives everything.
You have that framework that can be consistently repeated.
Look across brands and say which ones are fun and lively and which ones are boring.
What are some of the things you think maybe you learned that were valuable for you to take into the smaller industries?
That's a great question. Just think that willingness to show who you are is probably the number one thing that makes people relate to you. And just because you have a following doesn't mean you're going to sell books.
Hey guys, before we listen to the full episode, we wanted to ask, if you're liking this content, would you please subscribe to the channel and like the video? It really helps me and our team grow this podcast and bring in more awesome guests to the channel. Thank you, and back to the episode. Welcome to the studio. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to have this conversation with you. So you've got quite a background. You work around personal branding. You're an author. You've worked with Forbes Books. You've been in the marketing space. You've done a lot. Mm-hmm. Before we go back in kind of your story, tell us the summary from your words. Like, what do you do today?
What do I do today? I think today I help people build their brands and grow their businesses and sort of pursue their dreams.
Oh, that's a nice summary.
And have something meaningful to attach their lives with and before it's all said and done.
That's cool. I like that. Helping people build their dreams. That's a powerful position.
Yeah.
So take us back a little bit on some of your career journey. I love going as far back as guests would like to, because I always tell people, I think there's value that we can take out of everybody's story. And then we talk about, some of the challenges that have been faced. And so let's go back. Like, what were some of the first things that you did career-wise?
Well, I initially was pre-med in college, so my goal was to go to medical school. And I did medical research for a couple of years, and I was working with all these people in medical school who said, don't go to med school. Like, medicine isn't what it used to be. And I'm so glad I listened to their advice. And then I also thought, I don't want to spend the rest of my life in a hospital. Those are very depressing places. So I ended up going back and getting my business degree and learning, more than biology and chemistry, and loved graduate school. And then from there, initially went into the marketing field, working in the healthcare space because I had that interest earlier. And then gradually just departed from healthcare and did consumer goods and moved all over the country. I was in Boston originally, working for Polaroid and Welch's, and got great training experience there and lived in Boston. And then moved to Seattle to work for Starbucks at their corporate headquarters. So I worked for some really exciting big brands. And then somebody called me in to work for a startup, or I think a recruiter reached out to me. And then once I hit startup world, I was like, never, ever going back to corporate.
Oh, really?
So it was I just loved the vibrancy, and every day was different, and, it was crazy, and that just fit my personality more. But the downside is that startups go out of business all the time. So I felt like I was constantly like looking for a new job and looking for a new startup. And so I decided to start my own business instead, and ran a marketing agency for a long time, doing primarily branding for businesses, kind of small, medium-sized businesses. And then personally, I decided to pick up and leave Boise, Idaho, and go to Nashville. And I was a little nervous about continuing that pursuit since I knew no one in Nashville. And that's when I went to work for Forbes Books and kind of took my background in corporate branding to personal branding and to authors and entrepreneurs specifically. And then now at Brand Builders Group. So doing something similar, but Brand Builders is a little bit more comprehensive because it's not just about the brand. It's, the follow-on part of the brand. And what are you going to do with it?
Yeah. Okay, so let's go back a little bit. What comes to mind for you as some of the key things that you learned? Some of your early positions were straight into those big corporate, monsters, yet also very great brands. Like you said, you probably got thrown into the deep end, learned a lot. What are some of the things you think maybe you learned in those first roles at those big firms that were valuable for you to take into the smaller industries?
That's a great question, and I'm so thankful for that corporate experience because corporations are more structured and they do put more processes in place, and there is more accountability to numbers, and especially doing market research for product launches, and there's years of storied practice at how to do those things, and to have learned them firsthand was super helpful. There were also bigger budgets for like personal development, like
That's
management
true, yeah.
training, sales training, presentation training that were super valuable to learn. And so then you take that and you go into a startup that has no structure, has no processes, no nothing. And I could easily apply what I had learned in a corporate environment to help bring structure to those crazy environments.
Yeah, I think that's very true, and it's something I still see now is most startups, and even into like mid-sized companies, at least in most of the industry that we're immersed in around construction, engineering, architecture, emerging technologies, it almost feels like brand and even content and marketing and being online is like an afterthought. Big companies have whole departments, have whole teams, have whole budgets, but it feels like the small and the mid-sized companies put very, very, very little effort toward that. And maybe they're not really sure where to start or how, or, do we just go hire one marketing person, or do we?
Right. Well, I mean, you take it for granted, Starbucks as a perfect example. I mean, the reason why the brand is so recognizable, I mean, sure, they have retail stores on every corner, but there's so much consistency. They established what their brand stood for, not just in looks, but the experience. And they stuck to it, like Starbucks or not. I mean, they have stuck with their experience and carried it forward through the years, and that's why there's such tremendous brand recognition. But you go into a startup environment, they skip that process, and then nobody knows who they are, what they stand for. So if they don't know it internally, no one else is going to know.
Yep. Yeah, it kind of becomes when I talk to people about brand, it's like whether you purposely build it or you accidentally build it, you're building it.
Right.
You're letting either other people decide what you are or how they think about you. But actually, I kind of want to ask that question to just hear some of your thought around it. Many people, if you ask what is brand, there's a lot of different answers that come out of that. It's the logo, it's the color you pick, it's the way people think about you. How would you define a brand?
Yeah, I mean, it is certainly a logo and colors, but I think and having that consistency over time is critical. But it's really about who you are, what you stand for, what you want your customer to experience or feel when they, interact with your brand. And I think it's the personality. Like, I mean, you can look across an array of brands and say which ones are fun and lively and which ones are boring or conservative. And, that's important for people to know so they can resonate with your brand or not.
Yeah. What would be one of your early favorite types of projects that you got to work on?
Oh, that's a really good question. I was always kind of a numbers geek. I was a math science kid growing up, which is why I was pre-med. So I gravitated to market research. I think specifically, I just felt it was super interesting to have a concept and go test it and do quantitative and qualitative research and bring the concept to life. So I think I gravitated to market research really early on.
Yeah, numbers are important when you start getting into, I guess, all aspects of marketing. Many people just create content and put it out.
Yeah.
And then you get the people who are like, yeah, but what's really happening with it? What are the analytics look like? What's working? And I think in all areas, that data piece becomes pretty important.
Well, I work for consumer brands, like well-known consumer brands, so that customer input and opinion was so important. And then in Seattle, I went straight into the tech world. And the tech world is very different because it's all about, here's a new feature that we think people will want.
Yeah.
And there's no input from the customer. It's like, no, this is, and I mean, it still happens. You know, you get a new feature on your iPhone, you're like, did I want that?
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it's a different world when you force your thoughts and opinions on the customer as opposed to the other way around.
Yeah, we've had a number of those questions internally, even for us, where it's like, I've had some people say, well, you need to build what people are asking for. And I'm like, yeah, but sometimes when you're an innovative company, you're thinking of providing something that no one's asking for, but you're not going to know if they want it or not until you actually try.
Well, I think you have to take market research or opinions of your customers, keep it in context because, for example, to date myself, was working on HTC in like 2007, 5 to 7, and that was before the iPhone launched. And so it was actually the first touch phone. And I literally went around the country doing market research on, do you want a touch phone? What do you think of touch technology? And everybody was like, we don't want that. Like ATM machines don't even work. And so, so that's why you have to like take what they say and glean out the good stuff. Yeah. And yet be able to say, well, this is a time when we actually do know better.
Yeah. So when in your journey, or why in your journey did you decide to start your own business?
It's funny. My dad's an entrepreneur, and I think I always had that in me. But, deciding that, I don't want to go work for another startup that's going to go out of business kind of threw me that direction. Okay. But I think once I got into it, running my own business, I was like, now I've really, I'm definitely, this is in my soul, entrepreneurship. Because it either is or isn't, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I end up talking about entrepreneurship a lot with people. And I think, like you said, you either know quickly, like, this is for me, or it's not. I think the reason most small businesses fail, I didn't do market research. I have no stats on this, but I think the majority of the reason they fail or close is not because they couldn't build the business, but because of misaligned expectations.
Yeah.
So many people go into business thinking, well, this is how you get more freedom and more time, and I'm get to work less and enjoy the beach, and and it's like, building a company for the first few years for most businesses, you're working way more hours, you're working way harder, you're making less than if you went and got a normal job, and I think that's the number one reason most businesses end up failing.
Yeah, I mean, it takes time, and there is autonomy in entrepreneurship, but like freedom and time, those two, not so sure.
Yeah, there's trade-offs, but I always try to tell people, like, I want to encourage people who have that dream or think that they want to do it. Many people don't take the step because they are afraid of it. It's like I try to say, like, if you think it's you, try it. Like, there is wonderful things to become, come out of business ownership, being an entrepreneur, but also, if that is not you, there's nothing wrong with not being a business owner. Like, be a leader within a company that you can get behind a vision. Let someone else take that. There are many headaches that come with being the guy that's responsible for it, or the girl that's responsible for it. And I think in today's culture, many people make it sound like, oh, that is the thing, is becoming the business owner or the entrepreneur. I think it's become very, I don't know how to say, like, you go on social and everyone's like, all you got to do is start this new business. You're going to be driving this Lamborghini, and it's, it's like,
No, it doesn't work that way. Well, and I think, what I think people also don't think about is the personal, your personal life and how that influences whether you want to go that direction or not. Because one of the other driving forces behind me running my own business is that I had a child rather late in life. And I didn't want to spend, 12 hours a day in an office and never see my kid grow up. And it's not that I still didn't work hard, but I had a nanny and I could go see him if I had a break. And, that sort of a personal aspect of my journey, I wouldn't let go of for the
Yeah.
world because I got to see my kid grow up.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a huge aspect.
So yeah, there's personal, and then there's also risk, associated to it as well. But yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot to juggle. Okay, how about your decision to write a book?
Oh, well, I had a bucket list. I was an anal retentive 7th grader, and I had a bucket list and had 3 things on my list. One was to write a book, one was to run a marathon, and the other was to be valedictorian of my class in high school. So I did the first 2, and then I was like, okay, it's time for the book. And so I will honestly tell you, my first book, I don't think it's great. Like, I think I just needed to go through the process and do it.
Yep.
And then you get better at it as you write. And I wish I had known BBG's curriculum at how to sell books, back when I wrote my books.
Yeah.
So, yeah, because I think there's 2 parts to it. There's the writing and then there's the selling.
Yeah, totally. So on that early list, was it just write a book, or did you know anything about what you were going to write?
No, I had no idea what I'd write about. And in fact, when I loved writing, even when I was younger, and I wrote mainly fictional stuff at the time. So I probably would have thought it would be a novel, but I am working on a trilogy now that is fictional.
Oh, cool.
So that's kind of my side hobby.
That's awesome. What you've written a couple books, is that right?
3.
Okay. What are the topics of those?
They're all related around health and wellness, so nothing to do with marketing or my career.
Yeah.
But my personal passions in life are just to, be outside and be healthy and cook and exercise. So that's what I wrote about.
That's very cool. Yeah, a lot of people, I think, have that deep passion that is not what they do for a living, but it's what they really enjoy or spend time in, and so that's why I think it's fun to hear what people write books about, because typically you're going to write about what is your deepest passion or your biggest interest. What was your experience like writing your first book or 2? What was?
I actually thought writing nonfiction was pretty easy and straightforward, and easy to wrap your head around.
Yeah.
And more process oriented, and you edit, and it's good to go, and you do it. Fiction has been a whole different ballgame for me, because I feel like the story could always change. It could always be better. You can always edit till the cows come home. So it's been, and it's also, you're inventing it. You're inventing the story as opposed to researching it.
Yeah.
So it's been a completely different experience, but also one that I love. And interestingly, also has, teeth in health and wellness.
That's cool.
I couldn't completely walk away from it.
It's still in there a little. What do you think, because you work with authors a bit now as well, what do most people that want to write a book, like, what are they going into that process with that is wrong? Like, what are some of the expectations or the thoughts they have around what it's going to be like to write and publish and all that typically needs to be kind of readdressed or corrected, you think?
Well, I think there's a number of misconceptions. I think a lot of people think first and foremost, everybody thinks the publisher is going to sell their book. Whether it's a hybrid publisher or a traditional publisher, or, they think, oh, they're going to sell it and market it and promote it for me, and they don't. So that's the biggest thing I hear from people. But I also think that people put 150% of their energy into writing it when they should think about what they're gonna do with it after it's published.
Yeah.
Or before it's published, because we actually recommend that you actually pre-sell the book. And most bestsellers today are pre-sold. So that's another misperception, is that, your book is about how good it is. And, what you do to market it after it is published. And the truth of the matter is, bestsellers are all, it happens in the first week the book is released. So they're pre-sold.
Yeah. Is that, do you have to do that in order for it to become a bestseller? Like, is there a certain amount that has to be sold within the launch, or like, what does that look like?
It's generally, I want to say it's statistically like 95%, maybe even higher, of bestsellers happen in the first week the book launches. There are exceptions, of books that continue to stay on a bestseller list, like, Let Them has broken all the rules because it's continued to stay high in the rankings. But for the most part, it's the first week.
Okay, now let's talk a little about, because some of these things all tie together. you know, whether it's entrepreneurship, becoming an author and writing a book, starting a business, personal branding. So let's start with why today, you know, versus 20 years ago. Why should people care about personal branding today?
Well, I think the whole business environment in general is changing. Not only are there more entrepreneurs and actually, you know, more people getting laid off because of AI. I mean, the whole world has changed. And with I think there needs to be this need. There's a need for people to determine, who am I? What do I want to be known as? Who do I want to serve? Like, that has become more and more important in today's environment that is more entrepreneurial, that is more hybrid, that is, you know, just in general more AI driven. That if you don't think about it, you know, then you're going to be at an extreme disadvantage.
Yeah, and I think many people think they should only focus on that if they are the business owner.
Yeah.
Or if they are, you know, trying to build and sell something personally. I think everybody should focus on it. I think there's a benefit that comes from anybody who can realize, like, this is the thing I want to be known for. This is my area of expertise. Becoming known for that and putting attention to building an authority around it as an individual, even if you never want to start a business, is still such a valuable thing because it helps other companies recognize you. It helps you build an authority even within the business or the organization you work at. It brings opportunities to you, even if you never took the route of starting your own thing. Yet then if you do have recognition, it also makes the leap if you decide to start something or try something. You already have a foundation for it.
It's a foundation, and it also forces. I mean, I know I went through a lot of my career where it was all about, what do you do? Like, even if you meet people at a function, it's like, what do you do? But nobody ever asks who you are. And I think if I had asked myself that 20 years ago, I'm not sure what I would have said. I'm not sure what I'd say today. But but I mean, I think it is helpful to go through that process and say, like, who am I? What do I stand for? Who do I want to serve? And think through those things, because whether you're an entrepreneur or you're a corporate person, or, you know, even if you're just a stay-at-home mom, like, I think it helps to know how you can help other people.
Yeah.
And what skills or gifts do you have to do that?
Yeah. Do you think, is it necessary to have a personal brand and or an online following if you're going to write a book?
Well, traditional publishers would tell you, yes, it does matter. And I think, honestly, if you do want to publish with a traditional publisher, at this day and age, you have to have some sort of social platform.
Yeah.
The reality is, social platforms don't sell books for the most part. So just because you have a following doesn't mean you're going to sell books.
Yep.
So there's, you know, a little bit of a conflict there, but I do think just it can't hurt to have a platform, if nothing else, for referrals and people, you know, building brand awareness and familiarity with who you are and what you stand for.
Yeah. It's interesting, you know, where times change, and I think the same is for the music space, maybe the author space is like certain labels, certain whatever, like they won't even take a band if they don't have a profile. They don't create content. It's like, you know, back in the day, I think you could do anything without social. Now it's just such a big part of business. You know, anybody that's looking you up, you want to work somewhere, they try to find you on a social platform. They try to look at your LinkedIn. They're looking at your content. They're, and even for me, you know, if I can't find someone on LinkedIn when I'm trying to learn about them, I'm like, it's this big flag of like, I don't get to see who you are. I don't get to see your history. I don't get to see how you interact with people. It's almost necessary to have some level of social presence, even if it's minimal.
Well, back to your question on the value of personal branding, I for one, and I talk to clients every day who say the same thing, that like my social platform awareness, what I post about, what I talk about, is so all over the place that does anybody know who I am or what I stand for? And if you don't know what your brand is and who you serve and you know, what value you have, like, how does your social platform reflect that if you don't know?
Yep.
So I think it's a nice roadmap or North Star for building out your social presence to like think through your whole personal brand.
Yeah. So how do you work with people on that?
Well, at BBG, I mean, it's funny. Corporate branding was a little different because we started with the why, like why are you in business and why are you doing this? With personal branding, it starts more with the who, and a lot of people struggle with like I don't know who I'm serving.
Yeah.
Like and we preach at BBG, it's the person you once were.
Yeah.
But it's you start with who you want to serve, and then you kind of get into what problem am I solving. What's my unique way of solving that problem for my audience? And then it kind of all goes from there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what's unique and helpful about somebody that wants to intentionally build a personal brand, it goes the same for a company brand too. Some of the ideas or principles cross over. If you're a small business, you're kind of answering some of the same questions. Who do we serve? How do we help them? Why are we unique? And then if you're doing it from a personal level, answering those same questions, then having that reflect in your content, in your profile, how you introduce yourself when people ask you that question.
Right.
Then it becomes, you kind of have that framework that can be consistently repeated. Because like you said a minute ago, if you don't answer those questions and you kind of make content about a little bit of everything, nobody thinks about you about anything. Maybe they remember like a certain piece, but if you answer those questions and now you're talking about that everywhere, that's how you start to become known for that one thing. You've made an intentional decision of like, this is what I want to be known for. This is what I want to help people with. And I think it's the repetitions, right? When someone sees a post from you and then they remember your tagline on your profile and then they remember how you introduced yourself. Now when they think of who could help me with, XYZ, that's how you start to rise to kind of that top of mind for people.
And I think a lot of people think personal branding is too like egocentric. But the reality is if you know how you're going to serve and how you're going to help, that really drives everything.
Yep.
It makes it less selfish and more about how, what good am I going to bring to the world? And that kind of puts personal branding in a different light.
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing. For me, I accidentally kind of started working on my personal brand. I started becoming known for certain technologies and stuff that I was using because I was sharing content about it, and people started thinking about me around it. And I hated being on camera. I still am not super comfortable on camera or walking into a networking event or a whatever. But when I made this decision of like, I think the way that I can impact this industry is filling this gap where I don't see a lot of people making content. I don't see, high quality podcasts in our industry. I don't see, a lot of conferences that have people on stage and creating content from it. And as uncomfortable as it is, I found that doing the podcast, it is not a selfish thing of like, I want to become famous. This is about me being on camera. But I saw it as that's the platform that I can use to elevate other people and to share insights. And so it's odd to take some of those steps because other people, you assume, and maybe you get feedback from people, some people think you're doing it from a selfish reason. And the more awareness you build, the more you become known.
Yeah.
You can't do that without also getting people who think negatively of you.
Right.
It's impossible. And you have to learn that you can't please everybody. And whatever you feel is like, the why behind what you're doing. And I've said, I think if you see that path, it no longer is a option. To me, it becomes your responsibility.
Yeah, it's a good way to look at it.
If you have a way to serve an industry or a community or your network, you have a way to serve them that no one else is, and you see that as an opportunity. To me, I feel like I'd be letting the industry down by saying like, oh, I don't want to do that. It's awkward. It's like, no, sometimes leaning into those uncomfortable decisions is where you really start to solve problems that other people aren't.
Yeah, and I think people want to serve everyone. I think a lot of people walk in and say, "I want to serve everybody," just like a company. Like, who's your customer? Everybody's our customer,
Yeah.
and that's kind of the wrong way to do it. The more niche you can get, like you're really good at staying very niche in your industry, and I think that the more we focus, the fewer of those people that have no value in your message because
Yeah.
you've really found an audience with whom your message resonates.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a challenging thing for people to do, answer those questions. Who do I want to serve? How do I want to
know.
help them? Where do I focus? But once you do it, it's like all the puzzle pieces start to become clear of how that puzzle gets built.
Yeah, and some people are really can jump into it and figure it out really fast. Like therapists are really super fast because they're talking to people every
Yep.
day and they know it helps them zone in on what they do and how they're going to help.
Yeah.
But most everybody else it takes them a while. Like I'm going through the process for myself as I'm doing it with clients, and it's taken me a while.
Yeah.
And I think those that, don't rush and think I know it right now are the ones that I think really evolve it beautifully.
I'm curious, kind of around that same point, if you have any other thoughts you could share. The people that you've worked with or that you've seen, go through the process of identifying and answering these questions, and maybe even then working on content to build authority.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think are some of the, either characteristics or actions that some of those people take that really find their lane and build an authority and build an audience and accomplish some of those goals they set out versus the people that kind of get stuck still?
Flounder. I think you have to be committed and walk into the process going, I'm going to figure this out. If it takes me a year, so be it. But to not, put it on the back burner and hope it works out. Like you've really got to stay focused and really work at it. I think also it really does help, and I'm not necessarily trying to sell BBG or myself, but I think having an outside perspective really helps because it's like the worst thing in the world is marketing yourself.
Yep.
Doing your own resumes. I mean, how many people love doing resumes and cover letters and all that stuff? It's hard to market yourself.
Yeah.
So I think when you have that exchange with somebody else who has that expertise, it really helps drive that process and narrow the focus. And then the more you narrow the focus, the more you can narrow your content and then, have that consistency and brand recognition. So it's kind of a little bit of, the commitment and the focus.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people underestimate the value of getting outside perspective, whether it's hiring a business coach, it's getting a mentor, it's finding a group of people that are like-minded, that will share feedback. And there's organizations like you guys and BBG that help with that. Mm-hmm. Because even when you think you know the right answer, it's like get feedback from multiple people, get advice from people who have seen the path to your goals, right? Many people, I think, default to getting feedback from close family and friends.
Yes.
And I always stop and go, okay, I have at least learned that the people that you should look up to try to either get feedback from or maybe model some of the things you do things that you do after are people that have reached what you're trying to build. Who is somebody that has built something similar to what you're trying to build? Because often if you're getting feedback from family and friends who, maybe they've never been entrepreneurs, they've never built a brand, they built, you often get this noise of fear, of risk, of don't do it. But then if you research and you listen and you watch interviews and you hear from other successful business people, they're like, all these decisions are what let you build. So to me, it's find people that have been on that path, because the best way, I think, to learn when you're either struggling or trying to make decisions of options to take, it's learning from other people's mistakes, other people's journeys.
And learning from your own, because the other thing I was going to say is, you can get your personal brand 80% baked. Go out, work, and practice what you're preaching, do some work, and you might discover, gosh, I need to make some tweaks.
Yeah.
And that's fine. That's actually, working with people and sort of practicing what you're preaching is another great way
Yep.
to learn, okay, this may be not 100% right. I need to pull back, here. And so, learning from other people as well as yourself and not be
Yes.
afraid to make mistakes and,
Yep.
and tweak it and make it better.
Yeah, I think one of the, that I think it gets talked about a lot, but failure is not failure. It's like anything great, anyone who's built anything great has gone through so much failure. The difference between someone who truly fails and someone who creates something, successful is they didn't quit, right? If you're failing, but you're learning from your failure, and then you try something different every time, right? Little micro tweaks. I tell people if you try the same thing, that's the definition of insanity, right?
Right.
Trying the same thing, expecting different results. But if you try to learn from the failure, and then the next time you attempt it, you're doing something different along the way, that's where you make those micro changes to where, every time's a little bit better. Then the failure truly is just part of the process of learning.
Yeah, and I think too, as you move through the cycles of life, your goals, your desires, your interests evolve and change.
Yep.
And so there's this whole notion of reinvention. I mean, there's a lot of people that want to leave corporate America and be entrepreneurs. Well, that's a period of reinvention. And so it's okay if you reinvent, at different stages in your life.
Yep.
And that's okay too.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I've watched multiple people go through that at a very high level where, again, desires change. Maybe they built a business for 20 years and they decided I don't want to do that anymore.
Right.
Completely new change. And they have to refigure out asking the same questions again. What is it that I want to do now? What do I enjoy? Who do I want to serve?
I think reinvention is a wonderful thing.
It is.
I work with a lot of people that are reinventing themselves. I've done it myself. My novels are about reinvention.
Yeah.
I just think it's a thing we should celebrate, not shy away from.
Yeah, absolutely. And I even think, again, back to some of the conversation of where we are today, I think that the option to reinvent at any stage in career is so much easier today than it's ever been, especially if you consider these things. You have a social presence, you're building an audience, you're becoming known in a network. When you build that and when you focus on that, a certain percentage of people will stay connected with you. You might be still relevant too. I think maybe 20 years ago, maybe it was a lot harder to change career paths.
Yeah.
And you find a lot of people that are still in a career that they don't love, but they feel like there's no option to change. And it's I think there's more opportunity today than ever to learn, to research, to, I was not in a career 20 years ago, when, before YouTube and all those things. But I've heard a lot of people talk about that, right? 20, 30 years ago, you couldn't just sit at home and YouTube stuff and learn and research and all this free content. You had to call people and try to go sit down one-on-one and learn or read books about it.
Go to the library and check out books.
Yeah. The ability to learn today and use technology and use content and learn from other people and use new tools like AI now makes the ability to pivot, to reinvent just, I think, so much easier.
Yeah, easier. And on the flip side, in a crowded marketplace with more people doing it, the more you know who you are, the better off you'll be.
Yeah.
It goes back to the whole, what's your brand? Who do you stand for? Because the market's more crowded because there are all these people leaving corporate.
Yeah. What do you, on that note, what are some things that people do when they're trying to define their personal brand that helps them stand out more? Because it has to be deeper or more different than just picking a niche, right? What is it that makes people unique?
I think being true to who you are and authenticity is the number one thing, and not being afraid to show your vulnerability.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you have to wear your heart on your sleeve every time you go on video, but I just think that willingness to show who you are is probably the number one thing that makes people relate to you.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's one of those that's like a challenge, right? Many people are afraid to get too personal or to share the things they like or they don't like, or they're afraid someone's not going to want to work with them if they believe XYZ, or if they, and I think those things that people shy away from are the things that help actually define, and it's a fear thing. It's you don't want to lose opportunity. You don't want to, make people not like you. And
No.
But I think the people that I enjoy following and watching content from, it's like they're just super real. They'll share everything. They're sharing behind the scenes. They're not, only trying to do scripted content. Like, they are willing to talk about any question. They're and it just becomes so much more authentic, and you as a viewer, I resonate to that way more than if I come across somebody who all their content looks produced and scripted, and it's like you feel like it's commercials.
Yeah, I was just talking to a client the other day about she's very polished, she's very successful in her field, and she's talking about bringing in something personal into her platform, and she's really nervous about doing it. She goes, it's not the person I am in my career to let this vulnerability come through. And I was like, take baby steps. Bring a little bit of yourself into this picture gradually till it feels right. And it's just a natural progression. And I said, I have a feeling what's going to happen is that now you're going to build this loyal following of people that resonates with this, who you are.
Yeah. 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 It's very, very interesting. One more question on kind of the work aspect, which I love hearing people's response to this, but work-life balance. Mm-hmm. What's your thoughts on work-life balance?
Well, I've always been told, even when I was younger, that I was like the pinnacle of work-life balance. And I don't know if I would say that, but I always value my personal time, whether that's my health and wellness or my friend time. And I've always, my entire life, said there's a certain point that I'm turning it off. I'm turning off work, and I'm going to enjoy my life. And that requires commitment too. And I've always put that as a priority in my life. What that means for other people, I don't know. But for me, it's, stop looking at the text, stop looking at the email, stop taking calls, and, be with your family, do what you love doing, be with your friends, and don't lose sight of that. Because I think if you do, you lose yourself in your work, and then, it's less meaningful because you don't have this other part of your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what my books were about, essentially, was sort of that balance. And like I said, it's nothing I think I've refined perfectly, but
yeah, it's always fun having those conversations. My answer is typically like, there's no answer. Like, there is no what should I do. To me, work-life balance is really it's a personal choice, And if you're a single young person that's ready to grind out career, go all in and go hard at it. If you're building a family, agree together. What does that look like? If you're building a business, there's a whole nother level of like a roller coaster of like sometimes you have to work extra, sometimes you can take off, and I think it's just one of those things that my favorite answers that I've heard that I kind of resonate with is like, it's not necessarily an equal balance of time of home and business. It's just trying to be very intentional and very present if you're at home or if you're at work, like just kind of giving your all at whatever it is that you're doing at that time.
Yeah, I remember one of the hardest things for me was, entrepreneurialism or entrepreneurship has its, peaks and valleys in terms of when things are super crazy or they're super quiet. And when they're super quiet, it's hard not to have anxiety about why isn't it super busy? And to take those quiet times and say, you know what, this is when I'm going to spend quality time with my son.
Yeah.
And I'm just not going to work. Like I said, always a work in process.
Yeah.
But to be able, like you said, to be intentional and live in that moment when things are quiet or when you have some downtime or when things aren't going well with work, to just be able to appreciate some of those other aspects of your life. But easier said than done sometimes.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I think it's very common in the quiet times to get to use that as like now's when I have to figure out, or I have
I
to
know.
build, or I have to do.
Yeah.
I think that's a good recommendation of like, you know what? Sometimes when it's slower or quiet, just let it be that. You know, when you are working, work on what you need to work on, but enjoy the quiet times because they're not always there.
No, they're not. They're definitely not.
Okay. I think, you know, out of respect for time, I know you got some travel coming up. Final question.
Okay.
So as much as I love talking to professionals in different fields, I also like talking to younger generations, talking to students, bringing them into our conference, and helping people kind of determine some of these answers that maybe they're, you know, questioning, what do I want to do with my career? You know, what's important to think about, you know, as I'm entering really the earlier stages of journey. So if you had, you know, a minute you were speaking to a younger professional, what's some kind of summarized advice that you would give? Could be a mix of personal and career, but what's some advice you would say?
Gosh, well, I'm going through this with my son right now. He's about to graduate from college. So I also have friends that refer their kids to me to talk about my field and whatnot. I think that, you know, it's okay to get your feet wet and not like something. And so don't wait for perfection because it doesn't exist. And just to jump in and try things out and learn what you like and don't like, and that's okay. And I don't know, it's a different ball game now than it was, you know, years ago. But I think that you just have to be willing to do things different. And I think young people with the hiring, you know, it's really a hard time for young kids to get hired, especially with AI, and they're shutting young people out of jobs. So I think you have to be more creative. And I think it's a perfect time to be more entrepreneurial too, because you have to get creative on how you're going to make money, because it's just not like it used to be.
Yeah.
Where there were all these jobs waiting for you.
Yeah.
So, and I think, you know, it is a good time to think about who you are and what you stand for, because you never know where you're going to land.
Yeah.
My son is like, you know, in music. I mean, he's a music business person, and he wants to be a producer, and he hates country music. He's in school in Nashville, hates country music, and I'm like, guess what? You may have to do some country music for a while.
You are in Nashville.
Yeah, so I mean, it may not always be perfect. So
Yeah.
Just jump in and figure it out.
That's great. I like all of that. A couple things that stand out to me. Not waiting for perfect. That's a big one. You know, I think in anything you do. I talk about that a lot when it comes to content stuff too. I've seen so many companies, so many individuals, they want to make that edit perfect, and then they edit and they over edit and they wait, and it's like, you never posted it.
No.
It's way better to like just be willing to put things out that are not perfect and learn as you go and improve as you go. And I think the same, like you said, for the younger professionals, the same. If I was to go back, like the idea of not thinking right out the gate, you have to know exactly what your career is going to look like. I'm like, no way. Like go intern a couple things.
Yeah.
You know, try a couple different industries or roles, because sometimes you get locked into that idea and you end up not liking that and you feel like you can't change later. Where if you try a couple things out, you might land at something that you become so happy with, that you're passionate about, that you didn't even realize was what you were going to love. And for me, the difference that comes in a career when you find a path that you really enjoy the work, it's so true. The quotes that are out there of like, if you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life. It's like, when you can really love your work and you show up to that, it's so much more fulfilling than I picked this career path because it's going to make money, but I hate doing it. Like, you don't want to show up.
I mean, everybody wants to make money, but if you make it all about money, you may end up being really unhappy.
Yeah, happens a lot. And last thing that stands out in what you said as well is in the hiring, getting creative. And the other thing that I would put on that as somebody who hires people, sometimes getting creative is also simple. Like simple extra steps. When I put out a job post and I have 100 people apply, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going through so many resumes. How do I even choose out of 100 people who I want to interview? And Sometimes it's one more simple step. Find me on social and send a message. Send a second follow-up. Send an email with the day after you applied. Sometimes it's just a little bit more action than what the normal people do. Some people just, maybe it's on a job board or something. They just submit the resume. And it's like these little extra steps that aren't even that creative can make you stand out as from a hiring perspective. Okay, you're the only one who sent me this extra message. You're the one kind of going out of your way of showing this interest, or you did a little extra research. You sent me this message of, hey, I just watched your podcast and I love these videos and I'm a video editor. It's like you relate to the job you're hiring for. It's little extra steps that I think can set people apart when they're trying to get a role. It's not actually going way outside the box.
No, it's funny. I remember this is a story from years ago that it's kind of fun. When I lived and worked in Boston, they put me in charge of the summer intern program. And so I got a lot of resumes from Harvard and Dartmouth. And I would open up these stacks, and they all looked the same.
Yep.
And they all were amazing human beings that had done, basically, solved world peace in the 6th grade.
Yeah, that's
and I was like, how could I possibly pick somebody? They all look the same. And so I would always look at their personal interest, and I would inevitably call somebody who I thought had an interesting personal interest. And then I did a test to say, okay, I'm going to hire this Harvard person, and I'm going to hire this person from a no-name school that looks fun. And we're going to see at the end of the summer who everybody wants to hire full-time.
That's fun.
So it's, but I think you're right. I think it's letting some of these personal elements shine through. I don't know how you do it. I mean, you probably have to get creative to figure out how to share that with somebody. But yeah, I think ultimately people are interested in you, not your resume.
Yeah. That's become huge. When I first started building a business, I used to hire based on the resume. It was like, I want someone who has this experience that has done this type of work. And then they ended up being terrible fits. We didn't like working together. And now I'm like the complete opposite. I care a little bit about resume, just barely, literally 10% of hiring decisions for me is based on resume at this point. It's really those other things. Why do you want to work here? Is the answer I'm just looking for a job? I like editing video.
Yeah.
If it's I love the purpose that you guys have as a business. I'm aligned with the mission. I want to come in and build something alongside. I care so much more about the people, the character, their drive, their willingness to learn than anything they've done in the past. And I think so many people have kind of shifted that way, where it's those extra things about the person and the personality and the characteristics and even some of the basics of do you seem like someone that's going to show up? Do you seem like someone that wants to work hard and be teachable? Versus I have this really experienced resume and I'm an expert. Those are things that I think as younger professionals, especially, entering the workforce, they don't have that experience yet. And I think you could take some of those things if you're struggling to find a role, trial it, play with that.
Yeah, you got, like we were saying, jump in and try things because you got to be creative nowadays.
Yep.
So,
well, thanks for sharing your advice and for coming in and sharing some of your story. And look forward to sharing this out with our community.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate you having me.